My husband's family called me a disgrace at my husband's sister's baby shower 20 minutes later. The caterer pulled me aside and whispered, "Ma'am, they're using your recipes again without credit." Then she handed me the invoice addressed to me. It started on a Sunday that should have been uneventful. Hot, heavy air blanketed San Antonio like a wool coat, and my flat-ironed hair had already begun to curl at the edges before I even stepped out of the car. The veranda, where the baby shower was being held, sat tucked behind tall gates and manicured hedges, its Spanish colonial charm screaming old money. I was 10 minutes early, out of habit more than intention. I always arrived early to events I wasn't wanted at. That way, no one could accuse me of making an entrance. And trust me, in Braxton's family, someone always would. I adjusted the hem of my sage green dress, a modest wrap style that I'd specifically chosen to be inoffensive. Not too loud. Not too plain. Just enough to blend in, like I always tried to. Braxton was already inside, helping with setup. He'd gone ahead early, partly to show support for his sister, Camilla, and partly to act as a buffer between me and the matriarch of the family, Mary Ann Hayes. My mother-in-law, in title only. In attitude, she was more like a high school principal who believed strongly in hierarchy, bloodlines, and proper dinner forks. As I walked up the stone path toward the venue, I passed a few of the other guests, mostly women in pastel floral dresses, soft curls, and pearls. Their small talk floated around me like mosquitoes. Names I didn't recognize. Baby registries. Hospital choices. The gender reveal, which had been a dramatic outdoor affair with a cannon that shot pink powder over their hilltop estate. I was not invited to that. I smiled, nodded, kept walking. Inside, the air was cooler, blessedly so, but the atmosphere was anything but. My name card sat at the far end of the long table, nestled between two of Braxton's aunts who once openly questioned whether I was the rebound or the mistake. I slid into my seat quietly. I wasn't here to fight. I was here for Braxton. That's when I heard it. The whisper, not even subtle. She really wore that? Bless her heart. I still don't understand what Braxton sees in her. She's rough around the edges. I didn't react. Years of hearing variations of the same things had trained me well. I busied myself straightening the cutlery, smoothing out the name card in front of me. But then Marianne's voice cut through the murmurs like a blade. I suppose we should just be grateful she didn't bring one of her food truck desserts. This is a baby shower, not a pop-up market. Soft laughter followed. I didn't look up. I just bit the inside of my cheek and counted to 10. I told myself what I always did, you are not here for them. You are here for him. I glanced across the room at Braxton, who was bent over helping Camilla adjust her sash, mommy-to-be in gold script. Camilla looked beautiful. Radiant, actually. 8 months along and glowing in a white lace dress that probably cost more than my rent back when I was first starting my catering company. I used to like her. Back before she started taking subtle digs at my job, before she rolled her eyes every time I brought a dish to dinner, before she forgot to invite me to her bridal shower. Before she stole my work. I noticed the food a few minutes later. Mini brisket sliders with pickled onions and jalapeno aioli. Elote cups with cotija cheese and honey chili butter. Lavender lemon bars cut into neat squares and dusted with edible flowers. My heart stuttered. These weren't just similar dishes. These were mine. Down to the goddamn plating. I'd sent these exact recipes to Marianne months ago when she'd casually asked for inspiration for Camilla's shower menu. She'd said they might use them as a guide for their own caterer. I never heard back. But there they were. On display. Being passed around and praised like the next big culinary trend. Oh my god, these sliders are amazing, someone cooed behind me. Right? I've never tasted anything like this. This caterer is phenomenal. I sat frozen for a moment. I couldn't even bring myself to pick one up. The lavender lemon bars, my signature dessert, stared back at me like little ghosts. Then came the moment that changed everything. A woman in black approached. Petite, graying hair pulled into a bun, face kind but unreadable. "Excuse me," she said softly, leaning in so only I could hear. "Ma'am, do you have a moment?" I nodded, confused, and followed her toward the service hallway, away from the guests. "I just wanted to say, I recognized the name," she said, pulling out a folded piece of paper from her apron. "Miriam Reyes, right? You own Reyes Catering?" "Yes," her voice dropped even lower. "They used your name to book the service. Sent me recipes, contract draft, the whole package. I assumed you were running the event or had licensed it to them." I opened the paper. It was the invoice. Miriam Reyes Catering LLC, but I had never signed anything. Never approved anything. Never even been asked. "They did this once before," she said gently. "At the last family wedding. I didn't say anything then. I didn't know. But today, when I saw you here, eating your own food as a guest, I couldn't stay quiet. I stood there, silent, fingers tightening around the paper. "Thank you," I finally whispered. She nodded and walked away. I stared down at the invoice again, and this heavy, molten heat began spreading through my chest. They hadn't just stolen my work. They had stolen my business identity. Booked a caterer under my name, used my recipes, and passed it all off as their own fancy, southern chic menu. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I walked back into that room and made a decision I hadn't made in years. I was done being polite. I stepped back into the main hall like I was walking onto a stage I hadn't meant to be on. My pulse thudded like it had a grudge against me, but my face stayed calm. It had to. Braxton's family thrived on drama, but only if they were the ones causing it. If you so much as showed discomfort, they'd circle like vultures. The only way to survive them was to stay perfectly composed. I didn't go back to my seat. Instead, I hovered near the back of the room, clutching that invoice in one hand like a fuse about to be lit. Conversations buzzed around me like nothing had happened. Camilla was unwrapping pastel-colored onesies and tiny socks, pretending to act surprised at gifts she'd definitely picked out herself. The table of desserts was now the centerpiece of attention. A group of Camilla's friends surrounded it, taking photos for Instagram, tagging #SouthernChicShower and #BumpDayTreats. Someone even leaned over to ask Marianne who the caterer was. "Oh, just a small boutique caterer we use for family events," she said, waving a hand like it was beneath her to give an actual name. "A contact through Braxton's wife, I believe. She had a few decent ideas." Ideas. I had once spent 4 years building that menu. 4 years of failed batches, tiny tweaks to measurements, long nights with burned fingers and flour in my hair. And now, here it was, claimed as theirs, reduced to a passing credit they barely bothered to give. I moved quietly to the corner of the room, pulled out my phone, and took a picture of the invoice. Then a few shots of the food, the displays, the guests fawning over my work. It wasn't about legal action, at least not yet, but I wanted documentation. Something to look at if I ever forgot this moment, this quiet, searing betrayal. Someone approached behind me. I expected Braxton. I even hoped, just for a second, that it was him, that maybe he'd sensed something was wrong, that maybe, for once, he would stand beside me before I had to ask. But it wasn't. It was Fallon. Braxton's cousin. The one who always looked like she was seconds away from calling the manager at a brunch place. She leaned in with her wine glass sloshing slightly. "You've been standing there a while. You all right, Miriam?" There was something tight behind her smile. A taunt, just waiting to be rewarded. "I'm great," I said evenly. "Good," she replied. "You looked a little out of place." I smiled. "I usually do. But don't worry, my work fits in just fine." She blinked at that, clearly unsure of what I meant. I left her standing there and walked away before she could form a response. I found Braxton in the courtyard, standing near a cluster of guys huddled around the new dad, Owen. I caught his eye and gave the smallest tilt of my head. He followed me instantly. Once we were in private, behind one of the side hedges that wrapped around the back patio, I handed him the invoice. I didn't say anything. I just waited while he read it. His brow furrowed. He looked up, then back at the paper. Wait, what? She used my business name, I said quietly. Again. His eyes scanned the invoice again, as if maybe he'd misunderstood. This is addressed to you. Yeah. Wait, you didn't cater this? I thought, no, Braxton. I didn't cater your sister's baby shower. I wasn't asked. I wasn't paid. I wasn't even acknowledged. He ran a hand over his mouth. Jesus. Miriam. I didn't know. You didn't want to know, I said, my voice soft but sharp. You've always kept quiet when it comes to your family. And I let it go. Again and again. He looked wrecked. You're right. You're right, I didn't think, God, this is not okay. No, I agreed. It's not. We stood in silence for a long moment. Somewhere inside, people were laughing. Glasses clinked. Someone put on Camilla's favorite playlist, country pop with a hint of soft jazz, and it floated out through the open windows. I'm going to talk to her, he said, finally. Are you? I asked, my arms crossed. Because last time, when she used my balsamic chicken skewers and told everyone it was her Pinterest-inspired original, you said it wasn't worth causing tension. And the time before that, when Marianne edited me out of the family photo on Facebook, you said she probably just made a mistake. So forgive me if I don't hold my breath. His jaw clenched. Okay. I deserve that. You do. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. But I felt something inside me crystallize, like I'd reached the limit of a line I hadn't realized I'd drawn years ago. He looked down, then back up at me. What do you want me to do? I didn't answer right away. I wanted to tell him to make it right. To call them out. To defend me, finally. But I realized something. I didn't need Braxton to stand up for me. I needed him to stop being a passenger while I was being run over. I want you to decide what kind of man you are, Braxton, I said. One who lets this happen, or one who does something about it. Then I turned and walked back inside. I didn't go to my seat. I didn't even look at the food table. I just stood along the wall, arms folded, heart racing, waiting. Not for a scene. Not for revenge. Just for the truth to finally have a voice in a room full of polite lies. I didn't have to wait long. Marianne spotted Braxton approaching, his shoulders tight, the invoice in his hand. And for the first time since I'd met that woman, I saw a flicker of surprise on her face. Marianne's smile faltered the moment she noticed the paper in Braxton's hand. She was seated now, perched elegantly near the center table like a queen observing her court. A chilled mimosa sat untouched beside her. Camilla was across the room surrounded by gifts and compliments, blissfully unaware of the storm about to crack open the middle of her celebration. Braxton walked with a purpose I hadn't seen in him ever. He wasn't storming. He wasn't yelling. But there was something in the way he moved, shoulders square, eyes locked, that made people step aside as he passed. He stopped in front of his mother without a single glance to the others watching. I need to talk to you, he said quietly, holding the invoice up just slightly. Marianne's brow furrowed, like she couldn't possibly imagine what inconvenience her son was bringing her in the middle of such a delicate social gathering. I watched from the edge of the room. No one else knew what was happening yet, but the tension in the air shifted. Like the room had taken a breath and was now holding it. Braxton, now's not really, she began. I'm serious, he said, not budging. That was when Camilla noticed something was off. She looked over, mid-laugh, and her smile slowly dimmed. Marianne, likely realizing there was no avoiding it, gave a quick glance around and motioned toward the side hallway. They stepped away, and I saw several heads turn to follow them, Fallon, for one, openly eavesdropping like it was her life's calling. I couldn't hear what was being said. But I saw Braxton's hands move, saw him pointing to the paper, then toward me, then back again. Marianne's lips tightened. She shook her head. I caught the rigid posture in her spine, the way her mouth pinched like she'd swallowed something bitter. She said something quickly, gestured like she was explaining a mess someone else had made. But Braxton didn't back down. And that's when something in me eased. He wasn't perfect. God, he was far from it. But he was trying. And for the first time, it looked like he was doing it without needing to be begged. After a few minutes, Camilla came over, confusion etched on her face. "Miriam, is everything okay?" she asked, but her tone was off. Light. Like she knew something was wrong but was hoping to charm her way past it. I looked her dead in the eye. "Did you know the caterer today booked under my business name?" She blinked. Then blinked again. "What?" "No. I mean, Mom handled all the bookings. I didn't, Camilla," I said flatly. "You used my recipes." Again. "You had your mother send them to a caterer. You used my name to make it look like I was part of this, like I endorsed it, without even asking me." Her face paled. "It wasn't like that. It was just, we wanted it to feel close to home. You've made those lemon bars for us before. Everyone loves them. That doesn't make them yours." I didn't think you'd be upset, I almost laughed. I wouldn't be if it was the first time. Or even the second. But this has happened over and over. You guys take my work and act like you're doing me a favor by serving it. As if I should feel lucky to have my food appear at your events. She opened her mouth to reply, but nothing came out. "I don't care what excuse Marianne gives you. I run a business. I make my living off of that business. You can't just strip my name and work from it and parade it around like it's a cute family favor." Camilla didn't respond. Not really. She just stood there, mouth twitching like she wanted to apologize but didn't quite believe she'd done anything worth apologizing for. She finally mumbled, "I'll talk to Mom." I didn't thank her. By the time Braxton returned, the air in the room had changed entirely. People had picked up on the shift, the lowered voices, the way Marianne was now seated rigidly with a thin smile stretched across her face like it was pinned there. He came to stand beside me. "She won't admit she did anything wrong," he said quietly. "But I told her if she ever uses your name again, or your work, or pretends you don't deserve credit, you and I are done showing up." I nodded. "That's a start. I should have done it a long time ago." "Yeah." Then, out of nowhere, Fallon stepped in like she'd been waiting for her moment. "I mean, it's just food, right?" she said with a fake laugh, looking between the two of us. "Like, can't we just move past the drama and enjoy the day?" I turned to her slowly. "It's not just food," I said. "It's the work I do. It's my name, my business, my reputation. And it's been stolen, twice. If it were your company's logo slapped on someone else's project, would you call that just business too?" Fallon raised her eyebrows. "Okay. Wow. Didn't mean to offend." "You did. But you usually do." She blinked, taken aback, and slinked away. "I don't usually speak up. That's not how I was raised. I was taught to keep the peace, to let things go, to believe that being quiet was the same as being strong. But something about standing there, in the middle of that overdecorated, picture-perfect baby shower, made me realize silence had only ever benefited them. It had never protected me. As Braxton reached for my hand, tentatively, like he wasn't sure if I'd take it, I let myself hold it. Just for now. Because even if everything else was shifting, I wanted to see where it led. And from across the room, Marianne looked like she was reconsidering her whole life. That was the beginning of the unraveling. The baby shower limped along after that. People noticed the change in the air. The conversations got tighter, the laughter more forced. The polite southern sheen started cracking around the edges. You could practically hear the mental recalculations. What happened? Who said what? Should I still compliment the lemon bars or will I get dragged into something? Camilla tried her best to steer the energy back. She announced another round of games, something with baby bottle chugging, and a few guests cheered a little too loudly, desperate to keep the party on its rails. But you can't unsee tension once it's in the room. You can only pretend it isn't there, and most of these people were better at that than I'd ever be. I stayed along the wall, arms folded. Watching. Braxton had said the right things. Finally. But years of letting things slide didn't just disappear with a single confrontation. I'd grown used to standing in rooms like this, shoulder to shoulder with women who saw me as something less elegant, less connected, less worthy. Braxton didn't always see it. He thought because there were no slurs, no yelling, no outright cruelty, it didn't count as hostility. But I knew the quiet knives. I knew the way Marianne tilted her head when she looked at me, as if studying something in a museum she couldn't quite understand. I knew the way Camilla invited me to parties and then made jokes about my artisan truck food just loud enough for people to hear. I knew the way Fallon always found a way to ask, so is the catering thing still going, like it was a phase I'd eventually outgrow. And I knew, deep in my bones, that if I hadn't said anything today, if the caterer hadn't pulled me aside, they would have done this again. And again. With no guilt. No pause. They didn't think they were stealing. They thought they were entitled. After the bottle game, because of course there was a prize for whoever could down fake milk the fastest, Camilla walked over again. Alone this time. She looked hesitant. Not performative. Not playing the sweet sister card. Just tired. Miriam, she said quietly, can we talk for a sec? Somewhere private? I looked at Braxton, who gave a tiny nod, then back at her. Sure. We walked out to the garden, beyond the tables of decorations and into a small alcove where the music faded and the cicadas took over. She sighed. I didn't realize it was going to turn into all this. I thought you'd be flattered. I mean, people love your food. I tilted my head. You thought I'd be flattered that you used my name, my recipes, my business identity, without asking? She winced. Okay. Yeah. I hear it now. It sounds bad. It is bad. I wasn't trying to be shady, she insisted. I really wasn't. Mom just said she had a way to get good catering without paying full price. She said you'd sent her the recipes a while back. I didn't know she booked it using your name. You didn't think to ask? I should have. I waited. Let the silence hang. I'm sorry, she said finally. It wasn't dramatic. Not dripping in tears. Just quiet. I wanted to believe it. But apologies aren't band-aids. They don't fix what's already been bled out. And when someone keeps doing the same thing over and over again, at some point, the word sorry stops meaning I regret it and starts meaning I got caught. You've done this before, Camilla, I said. Maybe not with invoices, but with credit. You've let people think you came up with dishes you watched me test in my kitchen for hours. You let your mom act like I'm lucky to be included, when all I've ever done is give to this family. I show up. I bring food. I smile when I'm being insulted. But I'm not going to let you all take from me anymore. I get it. I don't think you do. But I hope you will. She nodded, looking out over the garden wall. I don't want things to be weird, she said, still not looking at me. They already are. Then. I want to fix that. That's up to you, I said. But don't try to fix it for the sake of your image. Do it because you actually care. Because I'm not shrinking myself anymore to make this family comfortable. She nodded again, and we stood there for a long moment. Not friends. Not enemies. Just two women who finally saw each other without all the social gloss. When we went back inside, the vibe had shifted further. People were sneaking looks at their phones, quietly checking the time. The event was winding down. I noticed Marianne standing stiffly near the door, locked in conversation with Fallon and another aunt whose name I never bothered to remember. Her gaze flicked toward me once, sharp and assessing. She didn't approach me. She didn't offer an apology. But she didn't say another word out loud the rest of the afternoon. Braxton stayed close to me now. Not in the performative, overly affectionate way he sometimes adopted when he felt guilty. Just quietly present. Like he'd finally realized that being neutral in a fight isn't peacekeeping, it's surrendering on someone else's behalf. Before we left, Camilla walked us to the door. She gave me a small gift bag. Not a party favor, she said quickly. Just a thank you. For everything. And a little olive branch. Inside was a small box of thank you cards and a handmade kitchen towel with my business name embroidered on it. Probably Etsy. Probably last minute. But still, an effort. I didn't smile. But I said, thank you. Because that's how bridges begin, not with fireworks. With something quiet. Something small. But I wasn't sure yet if I wanted to rebuild this one. Braxton opened the passenger door for me. As I slid in, I caught one last look at the veranda, the venue, the guests, the pastel decorations, the leftover lemon bars still being devoured like stolen treasure. And in that moment, I didn't feel angry. I felt done. Not defeated. Not broken. Done, with being polite, with being small, with letting people tell my story for me. As we pulled out of the driveway, Braxton reached over and rested his hand on mine. No words. Just a gesture. For now, that was enough. But I had plans of my own. Plans they weren't ready for. We didn't talk much on the drive home. Braxton knew better than to fill the silence with apologies. That part had already been done. This wasn't a wound that needed more words. What it needed was change, and time to see if it would actually happen. I spent the next few days in the kitchen. Not to cook out my feelings, though that used to be my go-to. This time, I was organizing. Relabeling digital files. Locking up private recipes. Putting protections in place that I should have done years ago. I contacted a lawyer I'd worked with when I first registered my business and asked about how I could secure my intellectual property. She walked me through every step: copyrights, recipe licensing, client usage policies. It was tedious. It was expensive. It was long overdue. Braxton came home every night and offered to help. Sometimes he'd just sit at the counter with a glass of wine while I worked, watching me in that quiet, thoughtful way he'd adopted since the baby shower. He asked questions, not to challenge, but to understand. I explained what NDAs were. Why watermarks mattered. Why I no longer wanted my recipes handed out for family occasions. He listened. And that was new. A week later, I had a plan. Not revenge in the way people imagine it. There were no screaming confrontations or Facebook callouts. No lawsuits or viral takedowns. My revenge was built like everything else I'd ever done. Slow. Steady. Precise. It started with a dinner invite. Camilla texted me, asking if we'd be willing to come over for a smaller, casual get-together before the baby arrived. Just immediate family. She wanted a reset. I could tell by her wording that it was her idea, not Marianne's. Braxton asked me if I wanted to go. I said yes. And then I got to work. I offered, casually, without pressure, to bring something sweet for the evening. Camilla responded almost immediately, thrilled, probably thinking this meant the tension had passed. I told her I had a new dessert I was testing and I'd love for them to be my guinea pigs. She said she'd love that. Of course she would. What she didn't know was that this dessert didn't exist. Not yet. I spent 2 days in the kitchen creating something entirely new, a flaky, honey almond tart with burnt cinnamon meringue and a gingered orange glaze. It was rich, subtle, balanced. and complicated. Nothing simple enough to casually copy or reverse engineer after a few bites. And the name? I called it Family Secrets. When we arrived, the tone was lighter. Camilla was polite, if a bit careful, and Marianne greeted us with a distant nod. Fallon wasn't there, thank God. Camilla served takeout but dressed it up in stoneware and fresh herbs, clearly trying to keep things relaxed. I appreciated the effort. After dinner, I brought out the tart. Camilla lit up. Oh my God, that looks incredible. I plated it for everyone, watched them take bites. The reactions were everything I expected, gasps, compliments, second bites before firsts were even swallowed. This is amazing, Marianne said, eyes wide in spite of herself. What is this? Camilla asked. I've never had anything like it. I smiled. It's new. I'm calling it Family Secrets. Fitting, right? They all chuckled politely, not catching the double meaning. Are you adding this to your menu? Camilla asked, still chewing. I might. Haven't decided. Still testing it. That's why I haven't written it down anywhere yet, not even typed it out. She nodded. You have to. I mean, this is something people would pay for. Oh, they will, I said. I let that hang. Because here's what I'd done. I embedded a unique flavoring blend in the tart, just a hint, created by a specific ratio of spices and extract that only I would recognize. If anyone ever tried to replicate it without my permission, I'd know. And better yet? I had already applied to trademark the dessert under Rhea's Catering, with the name and flavor profile filed with my lawyer. Any attempt to steal it would be legally actionable. I had learned. Not just how to protect my work, but how to own it. That night, I left the tart with them. Let them gush. Let them plot. Let them wonder. And then, 2 weeks later, it happened. Camilla posted a photo of the dessert on her Instagram. My new favorite sweet, hoping to feature this at a few events coming up. Recipe coming soon. No credit. No mention of me. Not even a tag. I smiled when I saw it. Because the next day, she got a letter, hand-delivered, on Rhea's Catering stationery, drafted by my lawyer and co-signed by me. Cease and desist. Unauthorized use of a proprietary recipe filed under trademark law. It was polite. Professional. Firm. And unshakable. She called me that night, panicked. I didn't realize, Miriam, I thought, you thought it was just another thing you could take, I said, calm as ever. It's not. She tried to explain. Tried to soften it. I let her talk. Then I said, this isn't personal, Camilla. This is business. Just like you treated it. Silence. I'm not mad, I added. I'm just done pretending we're all playing by the same rules when you keep changing them behind my back. A week later, the post was taken down. A formal apology was sent. And a payment was made, out of respect, she wrote in the memo line. For creative rights. Marianne never said a word. But I noticed something interesting. The next family event, they didn't ask me to bring a thing. And you know what? That was the most delicious part. Because revenge doesn't have to be fire and fury. Sometimes, the most satisfying thing is watching the people who used to mock you realize they can't reach you anymore. Not because you're being cruel. But because you've simply outgrown them. And you finally made them realize it.